Hi everyone and welcome to the second JavaScript pro tip. Today we're focusing on all the good ways of accessing the last items in an array or a string. So usually when we access strings or arrays for the last items, we go with the traditional slice method that's available on strings and on arrays, and that accepts negative indices from the end of the sequence. It's like you would put first.length ahead of that. So -1 is the last item, -2 is the item before that, and so forth. And so for strings, that's fine, that yields strings. But when we use that on arrays, like we do here with wonders, it's a lot more difficult because it always returns an array. If I'm on -1, like I'm here, I don't just have the Elliot string, I have an array with Elliot. -2 would give me everything from the penultimate item on. If I want a single item, I have to use an explicit end for that range. That end is exclusive. When the beginning is inclusive, from -2 inclusive to -1 exclusive. And still, again, that's an array, that's not the item itself. I would have to add something like square bracket 0 or something. And talking about square brackets, that's what we'd like to use, right? We'd like to use the square brackets operator to access those positions, but as you can see, that doesn't work. That gives us undefined, and that actually makes sense because what happens is that the square bracket is a very generic indirect indexing operator, and that takes an expression that produces the name of the property, and the property has to exist under that very name. So -1 is not a property that exists as -1 on the array or the string. For wonders, the last item is property 3, not -1. So that leaves us having to add that kind of crap like wonders.length and first.length, and that's very verbose, that's very repetitive, especially if the name of the array or string is fairly long. That yields like a very, very long expression that doesn't feel good. So how can we improve on this? Well, a first approach, which is actually fairly technical but kind of funny, is to use ECMAScript proxies. ES proxies are a fairly technical subject. If you're interested into that, there's a talk in English on the Frontiers YouTube channel. The link is in the description that I gave a couple of years back explaining proxies. There's also the MDN, Mozilla Developer Network documentation about proxies. Again, link in description. And there's a link to the article matching that video in the description again, where you can copy paste that code and play with it in your browser or in Node or anywhere you see fit. Anyway, what that does is that lets me wrap any array or really any property that uses numeric indices, and that yields, that allow negative indices method yields a new array, a new object on top of the original one, except it does convert those property names. When I use property names that are negative numbers, -1, -2, -3, it converts them to something, adding it to length, and so that works beautifully. So that's one approach. Another approach is to use the new @ method that came officially with ES 2022, but it's been there for quite a while. It works on strings, it works on arrays and typed arrays, and that's great. That uses negative indices as well if you want to, and that will return a single item. So that's really, really great. That's really what we want to use to keep code compact with negative indices and getting last item. So really, @-1 is going to become more and more widespread, quite likely, in our JavaScript code bases. As a final bonus, there are new methods that are going to become official in ES 2023, but they're already there, they're already guaranteed, and they're already available natively on pretty much all the modern platforms. And what that does is that this provides equivalence from the end of the array to the find and findIndex that we've had ever since ES 2015. And so findLast lets us find the closest item to the end of the array that matches the predicate, and findLastIndex does the same thing for the position. So here, for example, findLast will give me the last item that matches that predicate, which is any string that doesn't start with a French vowel, so that's Suisse. Otherwise, from the beginning, it would have said Maxence. Same for findLastIndex, finding anything. The last thing that actually has a name under 7 characters, and that will give me Anna, position 2, third item. Otherwise, it would have given me Louise starting from the beginning. So new methods are also dealing with from last or from the end of the array that are usable already right now.